Cale Thorin stood before the largest gathering of military minds in the galaxy. The great hall of the Galactic Academic Institute stretched out before him, filled with beings from 47 different worlds. His forearms moved gracefully as he gestured to the massive holographic display behind him. "War is predictable," Kyle announced, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. "After 30 years of study, I can tell you exactly how any species will fight based on their biology and homeworld." The audience listened with respect. Cale was famous across the galaxy for his knowledge of military tactics. His book, Universal Constants in Warfare, was required reading at every military academy. "The Valorians fight with honor," Kyle continued, showing images of single combat between massive warriors. "Their volcanic world taught them that only the strongest survive. They challenge enemy leaders to personal duels. They never attack from behind or use tricks." Heads nodded throughout the audience. Everyone knew about Valorian honor codes. "The hive clusters use numbers," Cale said, displaying swarms of insect-like creatures. "Their queens send thousands of workers to overwhelm enemies. They don't care about individual losses. They care only about the survival of the hive." More nods. The hive wars had been studied for decades. "The synthetic collective relies on technology," Cale explained. "They calculate the perfect weapon for every situation. They build machines to do their fighting. They never risk their actual lives." Kyle felt proud as he continued through his examples. Each species followed clear patterns. War was like mathematics, predictable and logical. "The ethereal communion uses mind powers," he said. "They attack thoughts instead of bodies. They turn enemies against each other without firing a shot. They believe physical violence is primitive." In the front row, 3 humans sat quietly. Cale had invited them as a courtesy, since humans were new to the galactic community. The man wore a simple military uniform with the name Day on his chest. The woman next to him, Yuna, took notes on a small device. A young human called Tay watched with wide eyes. "Every species develops warfare based on their greatest strength," Cale concluded. "Valorians are strong, so they fight with strength. Hive species have numbers, so they use swarms. Synthetics have technology, so they build better weapons. Ethereals have mental powers, so they attack minds." The audience applauded. Cale felt satisfied. His life's work proved that war followed universal laws. "Are there any questions?" Cale asked. An elderly Valorian general stood up. "What about the humans? They're too new for your study, but surely they follow one of these patterns." All eyes turned to the 3 humans in the front row. Cale smiled and gestured toward them. "Perhaps our human guests can tell us which category they belong to." Day looked at his companions, then stood slowly. "We do things differently," he said simply. "Differently how?" Cale asked, still smiling. "Are you honor fighters like the Valorians? Do you use swarm tactics like the hive clusters?" "Not exactly," Yuna said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was calm and quiet. "Then you must rely on technology like the synthetics," Kyle suggested. "Or perhaps mental powers like the ethereals." The young human Tay almost laughed but covered his mouth quickly. Day shook his head. "We don't really fit into those groups." "Every species fits," Cale insisted, his confidence wavering slightly. "What is your greatest strength? What advantage does your world give you?" The 3 humans looked at each other. Finally, Day spoke again. "Our world gave us everything, and nothing." "That makes no sense," said a synthetic representative, its mechanical voice flat and emotionless. "Earth has every type of environment," Yuna explained. "Deserts, frozen wastelands, jungles, mountains, oceans. We had to adapt to everything." "But what's your military doctrine?" Cale pressed. "How do humans fight?" "However we need to," Day said. The answer frustrated Cale. Humans were obviously too young as a species to develop proper military thinking. They probably just copied tactics from older species. "Well," Kyle said, dismissing the topic, "I'm sure humans will develop their own style once they gain more experience." The presentation continued with more examples and detailed analysis. Cale explained how knowing a species' fighting style meant you could predict and counter their moves. War was a science, not an art. After the session ended, beings from dozens of worlds came to congratulate Kyle on his work. His assistant, a small creature named Pip, organized meetings with military leaders who wanted to hire Cale as a consultant. As the crowd thinned, Cale noticed the 3 humans hadn't left. They stood near the holographic display, talking quietly among themselves. Kyle approached them, curious about their reaction to his presentation. "Did you enjoy the lecture?" "It was very interesting," Una said politely. "You've clearly studied this topic deeply." 30 years of research, Kale confirmed proudly. "I've analyzed every major conflict in galactic history, including human conflicts." Tay asked innocently. Kale laughed. "Humans have only been in space for 200 years. You haven't had time for major conflicts." The three humans exchanged glances again. "Right," Day said slowly. "No major conflicts. Though I'd be happy to study human tactics once you develop them," Kale offered generously. "Perhaps in another century or two when you've established your military identity." "That's kind of you," Una said. Just then, Pip rushed over with a communication device. "Professor Kale, urgent news from the border sectors." Kale took the device and read quickly. His excitement grew as he processed the information. "Wonderful," he exclaimed. "There's been a border dispute between humans and the Korthak hegemony. The Korthak have deployed their standard shield wall formation." The three humans suddenly looked very serious. "The Korthak haven't lost a battle in 200 years," Kale continued enthusiastically. "Their interlocking shield formation is mathematically perfect. No force has ever broken through it." "And they're fighting humans?" Day asked quietly. "Yes, this will be perfect for my research," Kyle said. "I'll finally get to see human tactics in action, although I suspect it will be a very short conflict." "Short?" Tay asked. "The Korthak formation is unbeatable," Kyle explained. "Humans will either surrender quickly or be destroyed. Either way, it will demonstrate the importance of established military doctrine." The three humans stood to leave. As they walked toward the exit, Kale heard Una whisper something to her companions. It sounded like "poor Korthak." Kyle dismissed the comment. Humans were clearly too young to understand real warfare. Tomorrow, he would travel to observe the battle and add another chapter to his book about the importance of following proven military principles. He had no idea that everything he believed about war was about to be shattered forever. The observation deck of the research vessel Synthesis offered a perfect view of the battlefield. Kale pressed against the reinforced windows, watching the Korthak hegemony fleet arrange itself in the famous shield wall formation. "Beautiful," he whispered to Pip, his assistant. "Look at that precision." The Korthak ships locked together with energy shields, creating an impenetrable barrier 3 kilometers wide. Behind the wall, massive artillery platforms prepared to advance slowly while maintaining perfect protection. It was military art in its purest form. "The Korthak have used this formation for over 2 centuries. Kale explained to the other observers on the deck. "No enemy has ever broken through. They advance like a moving wall, destroying everything in their path." A synthetic observer made calculations on its wrist display. "The shield wall has a 99.7% success rate across 847 documented battles." "Exactly," Kyle agreed. "Now we'll see what happens when disciplined tactics meet primitive human aggression." The human fleet appeared on the far side of the battlefield. Kale counted 37 ships of various sizes. They faced 80 Korthak vessels locked in the shield formation. "The humans are badly outnumbered," noted a Valorian general. "Honor demands they should request single combat to avoid unnecessary casualties." "Humans don't understand honor yet," Kyle said. "They'll probably try a direct assault and be crushed immediately." The battle began with the Korthak advance. The shield wall moved forward like a slow tsunami of energy and metal. Artillery fire erupted from behind the shields, filling space with deadly plasma bursts. Then something strange happened. The human ships scattered. "There," Kale pointed. "Panic, they're breaking formation and fleeing." But the humans weren't running away. They spread out in all directions. Some ships diving below the battle plane, others climbing high above it. A few ships actually flew toward the asteroid field at the edge of the system. "Cowardice," the Valorian general muttered. "They abandoned their comrades to save themselves." Kyle nodded, making notes on his datapad. This would be good material for his next book about the importance of discipline in warfare. The Korthak shield wall continued its steady advance, but now it had no target to focus on. The scattered human ships were too far apart to engage effectively. "The Korthak will pursue the fleeing humans and destroy them one by one," Kale predicted. Instead, something impossible happened. A group of human ships emerged from behind a large asteroid and attacked the Korthak supply convoy. The supply ships had no heavy shields and were destroyed quickly. The humans then disappeared back into the asteroid field before the main Korthak force could respond. Interesting, the synthetic observer calculated. The humans targeted logistics instead of fighting forces. Desperation, Kale dismissed. When you can't win the real battle, you attack helpless support units. But more surprises followed. Another group of human ships appeared on the opposite flank and destroyed a Korthak communication relay. Then they vanished again. They're like insects, the Valorian general complained. No honor, no courage. Just quick stings before running away. Kale watched as human ships continued these hit-and-run attacks. They never stayed to fight a real battle. They struck fast at weak points, then fled before the Korthak could respond. This isn't warfare, Kale muttered. This is like chaos, the Korthak commander apparently agreed. The shield wall stopped advancing and began trying to corner individual human ships. But every time they moved to engage one group, the humans would attack somewhere else. Hour after hour, the pattern continued. The Korthak formation remained unbroken, but they couldn't actually fight anyone. The humans refused to engage the main force directly. The humans are prolonging their defeat, Kyle observed. But they can't run forever. By the 6th hour, things began to change. The Korthak communication problems were getting worse. Several supply convoys had been destroyed. Some Korthak ships were running low on ammunition. The shield wall is still perfect, Pip noted. The humans haven't even scratched it. Because they're too cowardly to attack it, the Valorian general said. Then Jin, the human fleet commander, broadcast a message on all channels. His voice was calm and professional. Korthak fleet. This is Admiral Jin of the Terran Defense Force. You have 15 minutes to withdraw from this system, or we will destroy you completely. Everyone on the observation deck stared at the screens in disbelief. The humans were demanding surrender. From the mighty Korthak hegemony, the Korthak commander's response was predictable.
Human fools.
Come and face us in honorable battle instead of running like frightened children. As you wish, Jin replied. What happened next shattered everything Kale thought he knew about warfare. The scattered human ships didn't group together for a grand attack. Instead, they did something no military doctrine had ever described. They attacked from everywhere at once. Ships emerged from the asteroid field, from above and below the battle plane, from behind debris fields that shouldn't have provided cover. They came from 12 different directions simultaneously, each group targeting a different section of the shield wall, but they still didn't attack the shields directly. Instead, they targeted the connection points between ships, the power relays that held the formation together, the command vessels that coordinated the wall. Impossible, the synthetic observer calculated frantically. The shield wall cannot be broken by attacking connection points. The mathematics don't support this approach. But the mathematics were wrong. As connection points failed and command ships were destroyed, gaps began to appear in the perfect shield wall. The Korthak tried to maintain formation, but coordination was breaking down. Human ships poured through the gaps like water through cracks in a dam. They attacked the artillery platforms that had been protected behind the shields. They destroyed supply ships, communication relays, and command centers. The Korthak shield wall, undefeated for 2 centuries, collapsed in minutes. This is impossible, Kyle whispered, watching the mighty Korthak fleet scatter in confusion. Impossible, the synthetic agreed. No military theory supports this outcome. But theory didn't matter. Reality was playing out before their eyes. The Korthak ships, designed to fight as part of a coordinated wall, were helpless when separated. The humans hunted them down methodically like predators picking off scattered prey. In 3 hours it was over. The Korthak fleet was destroyed or in full retreat. The humans regrouped near their original position, having suffered minimal casualties. Kyle stared at his datapad, unable to write anything. How could he document something that shouldn't have been possible? Pip tugged at his sleeve. Professor, what does this mean for your research? Kale didn't answer. He was thinking about Day's words from yesterday. We do things differently. For the first time in his career, Kale began to wonder if he understood warfare at all. The humans hadn't followed any known military doctrine. They hadn't relied on honor, numbers, technology, or mental powers. They had simply won. On the battlefield, Admiral Jin was giving new orders to his fleet. Good work, everyone. Set course for home. Hana, send a message to command. Tell them the Korthak situation is resolved. What should I say about our tactics, sir? asked Hana, the communications officer. Tell them we improvised, Jin replied simply. Watching from the observation deck, Kyle realized that word was going to haunt him. Improvised. As if 3 centuries of military tradition meant nothing. As if warfare was just a problem to be solved rather than an art to be mastered. He was starting to understand why the 3 humans at his lecture had looked so uncomfortable. They knew something he didn't. They knew that all his rules were about to be broken. The emergency session of the Galactic Defense Council was unlike anything in the organization's history. Representatives from dozens of worlds gathered in the Great Chamber on Nexus Prime, all demanding answers to the same question. What were the humans doing? Kale stood at the central podium, his forearms trembling slightly as he prepared to present evidence that challenged everything the galaxy believed about warfare. In just 3 months since the Korthak defeat, humans had won 4 more battles using tactics that made no sense. Honorable representatives, Kale began, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. I must report that human military actions are becoming increasingly disturbing. The Valorian ambassador slammed his massive fist on his desk. Disturbing is too mild a word. They have no honor, no code, no rules. Please, Kale said, raising his hands for calm. Let me present the evidence systematically. The first hologram showed a star system near the Zephyrian border. 3 weeks ago, the Zephyrian collective moved to claim an uninhabited system. Standard territorial expansion. The humans contested the claim, as is their right, noted the neutral moderator. Yes, but look at their method, Kale continued. The hologram showed human and Zephyrian fleets approaching each other in what appeared to be standard formation. The Zephyrians are excellent fighters, Kale explained. They use classic pincer movements and coordinated strikes. Very predictable, very effective. The hologram showed the battle beginning. The Zephyrian fleet moved in perfect coordination, like they had practiced for years. Then this happened, Kale said grimly. The human fleet suddenly broke apart and began broadcasting surrender messages. Several human ships powered down their weapons and requested safe passage to leave the system. Cowardice? Asked a synthetic representative. That's what the Zephyrians thought, Kyle replied. They began accepting the surrendering ships, offering safe escort out of the system as galactic law requires. The hologram continued. Zephyrian ships moved to escort the surrendering humans to the edge of the system. It was a standard, civilized end to a territorial dispute. Then the humans sprang their trap. The surrendering ships suddenly reactivated their weapons and attacked their Zephyrian escorts at point-blank range. At the same time, hidden human ships emerged from behind planets and asteroids, catching the main Zephyrian fleet completely off guard. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Treachery, shouted the Valorian ambassador. Violation of surrender protocols, added the ethereal representative. Kale waited for quiet before continuing. The humans call it a feint. They say it's a standard tactical maneuver. It's lying, the Valorian insisted. Kale moved to the second hologram. This brings us to the Molten Hegemony incident. The new display showed a human colony world under attack. The Molten Hegemony had landed troops and taken civilian hostages in the capital city. The Hegemony demanded human surrender, in exchange for the safety of 50,000 civilians, Kale explained. Standard hostage protocol suggests negotiation or surrender to save innocent lives. Every representative nodded. Taking hostages was distasteful but effective. Civilized species always negotiated to save civilian lives. The humans agreed to negotiate, Kale continued. They sent a diplomatic team to the planet's surface. Reasonable, the moderator observed. But the diplomatic team wasn't there to negotiate, Kale said darkly. They were gathering intelligence. While they talked, human special forces were infiltrating every hegemony position on the planet. The hologram showed the simultaneous assault. In perfect coordination, human soldiers attacked 17 different locations at exactly the same moment. They rescued the hostages and eliminated the hegemony forces in under 2 hours. Impressive coordination, admitted a synthetic representative. It gets worse, Kyle said. The humans had tracked every hegemony ship back to their home bases. While the rescue was happening, human fleets were attacking hegemony installations across 3 star systems. The chamber fell silent. Using a hostage situation to locate and destroy enemy bases was tactically brilliant, but morally questionable. They used civilian lives as bait for a larger trap. the ethereal representative said with obvious distaste. The civilians were never in real danger, Kyle admitted. Human planning ensured their safety. But they used the hegemony's own tactics against them. The third hologram appeared, showing trade routes between star systems. This is perhaps the most disturbing case, Kale continued. The Trade Federation imposed economic sanctions on human space, trying to force political concessions. Economic pressure is a legitimate tool of diplomacy, the moderator noted. Yes, but the humans didn't respond with counter-sanctions or negotiations, Kale said. Instead, they did this. The hologram showed subtle changes in shipping routes, commodity prices, and trade agreements. It looked like normal market fluctuations. I don't understand, said the Valorian ambassador. The humans manipulated the entire galactic economy, Kale explained. They created artificial shortages of materials the Trade Federation needed. They flooded markets with products that competed with Federation goods. They made secret trade deals that undermined Federation profits. The hologram showed the results. Within 6 months, the Trade Federation was facing economic collapse. They never fired a shot, Kale continued. Never threatened anyone directly. They just moved money around. Economic warfare, the synthetic representative calculated. Fascinating. The Trade Federation surrendered last week, Kale concluded. They agreed to all human demands just to stop the economic pressure. The chamber buzzed with worried conversations. 3 impossible victories, each using completely different methods. Nari, the human diplomatic security chief, had been sitting quietly in the observer section. Now she stood and requested permission to address the council. You may speak, the moderator allowed. Nari walked calmly to the center of the chamber. She was small compared to most of the representatives, but her presence commanded attention. You seem confused by our methods, she began simply. Perhaps I can explain. Please do, the Valorian ambassador demanded. Your people fight without honor. We fight to win, Nari replied calmly. Honor is a luxury we couldn't afford on Earth. What do you mean? Kyle asked. Bin, a human military historian, joined Nari in the center of the chamber. Earth is different from your worlds, he began. Most of you evolved as the dominant species on your planets. You developed honor codes and fighting rules because you were strong enough to have preferences about how to fight. And humans? The ethereal representative asked. We evolved alongside thousands of other dangerous species, Bin continued. Big cats that hunted us. Poisonous snakes that killed us. Pack hunters that outnumbered us. Diseases that devastated our populations. So? The Valorian ambassador asked impatiently. So we learned that survival mattered more than style, Nari explained. We couldn't afford to fight fair because Earth never fought fair with us. Sewell, a human psychological warfare specialist, stepped forward. Every species here developed one primary strength. The Valorians became individually powerful. The Zephyrians learned perfect coordination. The synthetics built better technology. What did humans develop? Kale asked, though he was beginning to fear the answer. Adaptability, Sewell said simply. We learned every trick we could find, from every source available. We studied every predator, every disaster, every challenge our world could throw at us. But surely you have some code of ethics. The ethereal representative pressed. Some rules you follow? We do, Nari agreed. Protect innocent life. Defend our people. Win the war. That's not enough. The Valorian ambassador protested. It's what kept us alive. Bin replied quietly. Kyle stared at the 3 humans, beginning to understand the true scope of what he was facing. You're saying that humans don't have military doctrine because you learned to use everyone else's? We learned to use whatever works, Sewell confirmed. Honorable combat when appropriate. Coordinated strikes when necessary. Superior technology when available. Economic pressure when effective. And when none of those work? Kale asked. Then we improvise, Nari said. The word hung in the air like a threat. Improvise, it meant humans weren't limited by any single approach to warfare. They could change tactics, strategies, even entire philosophies of conflict as the situation required. This is why your people are dangerous, the Valorian ambassador said finally. You have no limits, we have limits, Nari corrected. We won't harm innocents. We won't attack those who can't defend themselves. We won't destroy what doesn't need to be destroyed. But you'll lie, cheat, and manipulate to win. The synthetic representative asked if necessary, Sewell confirmed. Wouldn't you? The chamber fell silent. Every representative was forced to consider an uncomfortable question. If their species faced extinction, would they fight fair? Kale looked at his notes, then at the humans, then back at his notes.
Everything he had written about warfare was becoming obsolete. What happens now?
He asked quietly. Now you decide, Nari said, addressing the entire council. Do you want to keep playing by the old rules, or do you want to learn new ones? As the session ended and representatives filed out in worried clusters, Kale remained at his podium. For the first time in his career, he realized he might be studying the wrong thing entirely. Maybe warfare wasn't about following rules. Maybe it was about breaking them. The ruins of Proxima Station floated in space like a broken crown. Kale's shuttle approached carefully, navigating around twisted metal and debris fields that told the story of the most impossible battle in galactic history. Tell me again how many humans were stationed here? Kale asked his pilot. 5,000, sir, the pilot replied, checking his instruments. Mostly civilian researchers and support staff. And how many Nexus Empire forces attacked? 50,000. Elite assault troops with full battle armor and siege equipment. Kyle stared at the wreckage. The Nexus Empire was famous for their technological superiority. Their weapons could cut through solid steel like paper. Their armor could withstand direct hits from plasma cannons. They had never lost a battle when they held numerical advantage, until now. The shuttle docked with the least damaged section of the station. Kale floated through corridors that looked like they had been through a hurricane. Blast marks covered the walls. Ceiling panels hung loose. Emergency lighting flickered randomly. This way, Professor, his guide said. Commander Kang waited in what used to be the station's main conference room. The human officer looked tired but alert. Bandages covered several wounds on his arms and face. Commander Kang, Kyle said respectfully. Thank you for agreeing to this interview. No problem, Kang replied, gesturing to a makeshift table. Though I'm not sure you'll understand what happened here. Please try me, Kale said, activating his recording device. The Nexus Empire's official report says your people used impossible tactics to defeat a superior force. What did you actually do? Kang smiled grimly. We cheated. Cheated how? Every way we could think of, Kang said. The Nexus Empire came here expecting a proper siege. Fortified positions, defensive lines, orderly retreat patterns. Civilized warfare. And instead, we threw everything at them except the rulebook, Kang said. Ye come over here and tell the professor about your kitchen. A small human woman approached. He wore an engineer's uniform covered in burn marks and stains. Kitchen? Kale asked, confused. We turned the food preparation area into a weapons factory, Yi explained proudly. Pressure cookers became bombs. Kitchen knives became projectiles. We even used soup as a weapon. Soup? Hot soup, Yi clarified. When you throw boiling liquid at someone, they react predictably. Even Nexus battle armor has weak points. Kale made notes, trying to understand. But surely you had proper weapons. Some, Kang agreed. But not enough for 50,000 enemies. So we improvised. How do you improvise weapons against the Nexus Empire? Watch, said Bo, another human who had joined them. The medic pulled out what looked like a standard medical scanner. This is designed to detect broken bones and internal injuries. Yes? But if you modify the frequency and boost the power, Bo adjusted several settings. The scanner began emitting a high-pitched whine. It becomes a sonic weapon that disrupts Nexus armor systems. Kale stared at the device. You turned medical equipment into weapons? Everything became a weapon, Yi said. Water pipes became spears. Gravity generators became traps. We used the station's waste disposal system to flood entire corridors with things you don't want to think about. That's disgusting. It worked, Kang said simply. Nexus soldiers in sealed armor can't handle biological contamination. They had to retreat from half the station just to avoid infection. Kyle tried to process this information. What about actual military tactics? Formation fighting? Strategic positioning? We did that too, Kang said. But not the way you're thinking. The human commander led Kale to a damaged wall covered in hand-drawn diagrams. See this? Kang pointed to a crude map. The Nexus Empire expected us to defend key positions. The command center, the reactor core, the docking bays. Standard defensive doctrine, and you didn't? We defended the cafeteria, Kang said. The cafeteria, and the recreation center, and the library, and the small conference room on level 12. Kyle stared at the map. Why? Because the Nexus Empire wasted 3 days trying to figure out why those positions were important, Yi explained. They assumed we were hiding something valuable in those areas. Were you? Nope, Bo said cheerfully. We just wanted them to waste time and resources on meaningless objectives. Meanwhile, Kang continued, we were actually defending the maintenance tunnels and service corridors, places the Nexus Empire didn't even know existed. I don't understand the strategy. The strategy was confusion, Kang explained. Every time they adapted to our tactics, we changed them. When they learned to counter our improvised weapons, we switched to psychological warfare. Psychological warfare? We played music, Yi said. Human music. Apparently Nexus warriors find our songs very disturbing. What kind of music? Children's lullabies, mostly, Bo added. And some folk songs about death and suffering. Really messes with their heads when you're fighting for your life and suddenly hear a sweet voice singing about flowers and rainbows. Kale felt a headache coming on. This is insane. It gets better, Kang said. We also broadcast fake surrender offers, false intelligence reports, and recorded messages from their own commanders giving contradictory orders. How did you get recordings of their commanders? We didn't, Yi said. We just had our people imitate their voices. Humans are good at mimicking sounds. You faked their communications? Extensively, Kang confirmed. By day 4, half the Nexus force was confused about their own mission objectives. Kale looked around the devastated station. But they still had superior numbers and firepower. How did you actually drive them off? We didn't, Kang said quietly. What? We evacuated, Bo explained. The whole defense was just a delaying action. While they were fighting us, civilian transports were moving everyone to safety through maintenance tunnels and emergency airlocks. Kale felt his worldview shifting again. You mean this entire battle was fake? The fighting was real, Kang corrected. People died. Equipment was destroyed. But the objective was never to hold the station. Then why fight at all? Time, Yi said simply. Every hour we kept them busy was another 1,000 civilians safely evacuated. And intelligence, Bo added. We learned a lot about Nexus Empire tactics and equipment weaknesses. Plus morale, Kang finished. When word spread that 5,000 humans held off 50,000 Nexus troops for 6 months, it gave hope to every human colony under threat. Kyle sat in stunned silence. The greatest military victory in recent history wasn't actually a victory at all. It was an elaborate deception designed to achieve completely different objectives. How many people did you actually save? He asked finally. 4,837, Kang said without hesitation, plus 17 cats, 43 dogs, and one very stubborn parrot named Pete. You counted the pets? Every life matters, Yi said firmly. Even Pete, Bo added, though he bit 3 Marines during the evacuation. Kale looked at his notes, then at the humans, then back at his notes. I need to ask directly. Do you people have any conventional military training at all? Define conventional, Kang said. Standard tactical doctrine. Established strategies. Recognized combat principles. We studied all of that, Yi confirmed. Then we decided most of it was useless. Why? Because conventional tactics assume your enemy will also fight conventionally, Bo explained. But what if they don't? What if they do exactly what we did here? The question hung in the air. Kale realized these humans had just demonstrated that all conventional military thinking was vulnerable to unconventional approaches. So what do you actually teach in human military schools? Kale asked. Everything, Kang said. We learn conventional tactics, then we learn how to break them. We study historical battles, then figure out what we would have done differently. We practice standard formations, then practice abandoning them. We learn to think like our enemies, Yi added. Then we learn to think like something they've never encountered before. The goal isn't to fight better than our opponents, Bo concluded. It's to fight differently enough that their experience becomes a disadvantage. Kale finished his notes and prepared to leave. As his shuttle pulled away from the station, he watched the wreckage growing smaller in the distance. Commander Kang's final words echoed in his mind. Professor, you keep looking for rules that humans follow, but the first rule of human warfare is that there are no rules, only results. For 30 years, Kale had studied warfare as if it were a science with predictable laws. But humans had shown him something terrifying. Warfare might actually be an art form where creativity mattered more than doctrine. If that was true, then every military in the galaxy was about to become obsolete. and the humans were just getting started. Kale sat in his private study, surrounded by months of research that no longer made sense. His desk was covered with reports, battle recordings, and interview transcripts. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same impossible conclusion. Everything he knew about warfare was wrong. A soft chime announced a visitor. May, an elderly human woman, stood at his door. Her gray hair was pulled back simply and she wore civilian clothes, but something about her presence commanded respect. "Professor Kyle?" she asked politely. "I'm May. I believe you've been studying human military tactics." "Please come in," Kyle said, clearing a chair. "Are you a military historian? A strategic analyst?" "Something like that," May said, settling into the chair with a slight smile. "I've been watching your research with interest." "Then perhaps you can answer some questions," Kale said eagerly. "I've documented over 200 human military actions and I can't find any consistent pattern. Your people seem to change tactics randomly." "Not randomly," May corrected gently. "Adaptively. What's the difference?" May was quiet for a moment, studying the chaos of papers on Kale's desk. "Tell me, Professor, what do you think warfare is for?" "To defeat enemies," Kale answered immediately. "To prove superiority. To claim territory or resources. Those are reasons to fight," May said. "But what is warfare itself?" Kale frowned. "Combat between organized forces using established tactics and strategies. And if those established tactics fail, then you develop better tactics." "What if there's no time to develop better tactics?" May pressed. "What if your enemy is about to kill everyone you care about and your proven methods aren't working?" Kale considered this. "I suppose you would have to improvise." "Exactly," May said. "Now imagine your entire species learned warfare in that situation." Before Kale could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the research station. Emergency broadcasts filled the air, speaking of massive ships appearing at the edge of the galaxy. "The Void Harbingers," May said calmly, as if she had expected this. "Impossible," Kale whispered. "They've been gone for 1,000,000 years." "They've returned," May said, standing and looking out the window at the stars. "And they're not happy about what they've found." Within hours, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Void Harbingers had emerged from deep space with technology that made every known weapon look like primitive tools. Their ships were the size of small moons. Their weapons could destroy entire fleets with single shots. Worse, they seemed immune to every form of attack the galaxy could produce. Valorian warriors couldn't even scratch their hulls. Synthetic weapons had no effect. Ethereal mind powers bounced off them harmlessly. Hive swarms were swatted aside like insects. In 3 days, 17 worlds had fallen without the Harbingers losing a single ship. "We need an emergency strategy meeting," Kale told May. "Every species must contribute their knowledge." "Already happening," May said, pointing to her communication device. "But this time we're trying something different." The emergency session was unlike any military conference in galactic history. Instead of species-separated delegations, beings were mixed together randomly. Valorian warriors sat next to synthetic analysts. Ethereal mystics worked alongside hive tacticians, and humans were everywhere. Not as leaders, but as coordinators. "The Harbingers are using weapons we don't understand," announced Jun, a young human officer presenting the tactical analysis. "Our standard approaches have failed completely." "Then we need new approaches," said the Valorian general. "Agreed," Jun replied. "So we're going to use all of them. What do you mean?" asked a synthetic representative. "We mean exactly what we said," explained Ro, a human who seemed to be both philosopher and warrior. "Every approach simultaneously. The plan that emerged was unlike anything in galactic history. It wasn't based on any single species' strengths, but on combining everyone's abilities in ways that had never been tried. Valorian warriors would conduct boarding actions against Harbinger ships, but they would be supported by hive coordination networks. Synthetic technology would be guided by ethereal intuition. Human unpredictability would be enhanced by everyone else's disciplined execution." "This is insane," the Valorian general protested. "You can't mix different military doctrines. They'll interfere with each other." "That's the point," May said quietly. She had joined the planning session as an observer, but now everyone listened to her carefully. "The Harbingers defeated us easily because they understood our separate approaches, but they've never seen us work together. Working together requires unified command. The synthetic representative calculated. No species will accept orders from another. Then don't give orders, Rose suggested. Give suggestions. What? Humans learned to fight as part of Earth's ecosystem, Ro explained. We didn't dominate other species. We learned to work with them. Wolves helped us hunt. Birds warned us of danger. Even plants taught us which foods were safe. Your point? The ethereal representative asked. Cooperation isn't about control, May said. It's about finding ways to help each other succeed. The battle for the galaxy's survival began at the Proxima defense line. 60 Harbinger ships faced the combined fleets of 18 species, coordinated by human tactical networks but commanded by each species' own leaders. Kale watched from the command center, seeing patterns emerge that he had never imagined possible. Valorian heavy assault ships charged directly at Harbinger vessels, but instead of attacking immediately, they used their sensors to identify weak points for synthetic precision strikes. Hive swarms didn't just overwhelm enemies with numbers. They created complex patterns that confused Harbinger targeting systems, while ethereal minds disrupted their communications. And humans? Humans did what they always did. They improvised. When Harbinger weapons proved too powerful for direct assault, humans suggested using asteroid fields as cover. When Harbinger shields blocked energy weapons, humans recommended kinetic attacks using debris. When conventional tactics failed, humans proposed unconventional solutions. They're suggesting we ram the Harbinger ships, the Valorian general reported, sounding shocked. Not ram, June corrected. Board. Use Valorian combat skills to fight inside their ships where their big weapons can't be used. That's suicide, the synthetic calculated. Only if we do it the normal way, May said calmly. But what if we do it the human way? The human way turned out to be using hive coordination to time the boarding precisely. Synthetic technology to find safe entry points, ethereal abilities to confuse defenders, and Valorian strength to actually do the fighting. It worked. For the first time in the battle, a Harbinger ship was damaged. Then another. Then 3 more. Impossible, Kyle whispered, watching the tactical display. They're actually winning. Not winning, May corrected. Adapting. The Harbingers are powerful, but they're using million-year-old tactics. They can't understand what we're doing because it's never been done before. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, half the Harbinger fleet was destroyed or disabled. The remainder retreated to deep space, apparently as confused as everyone else about what had happened. How? Kale asked May as the celebration began around them. How did you know it would work? Because, May said simply, warfare isn't about following rules. It's about solving problems. And the best way to solve problems is to use every tool available. But your people broke every established military principle. No, May corrected. We used every established military principle. All at once. We just combined them in ways no one had tried before. Kyle looked at the tactical records, trying to understand. You mean humans don't have military doctrine because you learned to use everyone else's? We learned to use whatever works, May agreed. Valorian honor when courage is needed. Hive coordination when teamwork matters. Synthetic precision when accuracy counts. Ethereal wisdom when understanding is required. And when none of those work, then we invent something new, May said. Like combining all of them together. Kale stared at the battle records for a long time. Finally, he asked the question that had been bothering him for months. Why are you telling me this? Why help me understand? May smiled. Because understanding prevents fear, and fear leads to unnecessary wars. I don't follow. The galaxy was afraid of humans because we fight differently, May explained. But now you know why we fight differently. We're not trying to conquer anyone. We're trying to survive. And we've learned that the best way to survive is to help others survive too. By teaching them to break military rules. By teaching them that there were never any rules to begin with, May said. Only tools. And the more tools you have, the more problems you can solve. Weeks later, Kale published his new book, Why the Galaxy Needs Humans, a Study in Adaptive Survival. It became required reading at every military academy, but not for the reasons his previous work had been. This book didn't teach warfare. It taught cooperation. Military doctrine exists to help species fight effectively, Kale wrote in his conclusion. But humans taught us something more important. The most effective fighting is the kind you never have to do. When every species brings their strength to solve common problems, war becomes unnecessary. Humans don't break the rules of warfare because they're chaotic or aggressive. They break those rules because they've learned something the rest of us forgot.